Hi everyone, today we're going to attempt to create a Telegram bot that talks to a spreadsheet. The final product would be something that looks like this, where if you talk to it, it will send you a multiple buttons that you can choose from, and when you press one of the buttons, it will give you some message or some data that corresponds to that button. But before we get there, I will try to slow down and work our way up to that part of the tutorial. What I'm gonna do is like divide this whole tutorial into 3 parts. We will start with first just creating a bot that replies to us when we send out a message, something like this. So I say test, and the bot says your message has been received. The second part of this tutorial would be one where when I say save this to a sheet, not only will it reply to us, but I would like this message to be saved in a spreadsheet. And then finally, we will be making, like the third part of the tutorial would be this. We will be making the inline keyboard buttons. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so before writing code, I want us to go over the API, the Telegram bot API documentation first to see exactly what we need to create a bot. So it says here that we need a unique authentication token first, and it comes with new bots that are being created. I'm going to show you later how to get that. And it also says here that all queries to the Telegram bot API, it must be served over an HTTPS request and need to be presented in this form. Okay, so I'm going to, so later you will see that I will store this as a variable so that whenever we need to make a query, we can easily call this URL. And then we're gonna be talking to Google Spreadsheet through webhooks, right? So I think, yeah, so the set webhook method, we're going to basically think of a webhook as like your personal, so you have a user who's like talking to your bot, and think of a webhook as kind of like a courier who runs back to you every time. Not courier, someone who's like eavesdropping, someone's like wiretapping you're wiretapping your user, and basically your webhook runs back to you every time he hears something new that the user is sending your bot. So that's going to be, we will be needing the webhook so that we can talk to our spreadsheet later. But in order to create that webhook, we will need to specify a URL first, right? And basically our webhook will be sending information from our user to this URL, and this URL is going to be coming from Google Spreadsheet, right? And everything that our user sends gets sent to this URL, and from there we can do whatever we want with the information, since we have it stored on Google Spreadsheet side, right? And it's just going to be a matter of like putting that inside the spreadsheet, putting that data, putting that message from the user into a spreadsheet. So yeah, I think that's mainly it. And then of course, as I said earlier, the first part of the tutorial would be about sending messages. So we have this method, send message method, and it requires 2 parameters. Basically the ID of the user, Telegram ID of the user, and whatever message we want to reply to the user if he texts us or if he sends a message to the bot. So yeah, so let's go and all right, so to get started, let's pull up a spreadsheet where we're gonna start writing the code in. And make sure you are logged outside your company email, because the restrictions in your company domain will limit limit the bot that you're creating. So let's just pull it up from my personal Gmail or my personal drive. So I'm creating an empty spreadsheet here, and this spreadsheet comes along with a script editor, and this is exactly where we're going to be running the code. Cool. So as I said earlier, the first thing we need is a token, right? Which, let's store it as a token. The question is, where do you get it, right? So this unique authentication token comes from botfather. So let's hit him up. Hey. And he says that in order to create a new bot, we just type it out. And let's give it to name. Maybe because on this first tutorial, we just want to send a message. We name it send message. Okay, good. Now let's just add a bot in the end. How about without underscore? Or let's say send message one bot. Oh, that's odd. That's too long. You know what? Let's just say spreadsheet, like spreadsheet one. Okay. Okay. So unfortunately we had to name it spreadsheet 2. Cool. So we now have our token here. Let's store that. Awesome. And then as for the API, right, we need to be querying through a certain URL format. Okay. So I'm just gonna call this Telegram. Oops. URL plus token. Perfect. Now we can query all we want as long as we know what method we want to be using, right? So I think the next step here is to create a webhook. But as I said earlier, in order to create a webhook, we will need first a specific URL that the webhook is going to be sending, sending information to. And that web app URL comes from send message. Okay, it will come from Google Spreadsheet itself. So we need first to deploy the app so that we can get a web app URL. And guys, see the drop down that I'm choosing here, all right? Because I don't want you guys to spend a lot of time figuring out what's wrong with your code when all it boils down to is like the drop down options that you chose when you were deploying your app. So it always needs to be new. It needs to be from under your email, and it needs to be accessible to anyone, even anonymous people. Deploy that. Perfecto. We now have a web app URL. Perfect. All right. So now that we have everything here, I think it's time to create a webhook. So I'm just going to create a webhook function. Webhook. All right, so I'm gonna cheat on this one and just copy paste. For those of you guys who don't know, I have a step-by-step process on how to create a Telegram bot that talks to a spreadsheet. And I posted it on Medium, right? Last year. But recently there's been a lot of people who's been reaching out to me and sending questions about this tutorial, and that's the reason why I'm filming a video. Why I'm filming a video. So I'm gonna cheat and just copy paste whatever is here. Okay. All right, so we call upon the Telegram URL, right? And then we're just gonna add some method. This is the method that we're gonna add, right? And then we're just gonna append the method to the URL that we're gonna be sending updates or messages to through a webhook. Perfect. Let's see. Let's run this. All right, so let's run. You know what, before we run it, so I want to make sure that this is working. So I'm just gonna write logger.log. I think it's response URL or response that get content. I think so. Okay, so I think this should. So logger.log is like console.log. Oh, sorry, console. Yeah, when you're console.log. Okay, so we need first to give the spreadsheet some permission. And life is too short, right? So even if this app isn't verified, we're not gonna retreat back to safety. We're gonna verify it, or we're gonna allow it. YOLO. All right, so it's now running the function because I asked it to run earlier. Let's look at our logs. Perfect. So it says here, right, that the webhook was set, and we're able to pull up the logs because I inserted this code, but there's no need for this. Perfect. So I think the next thing that we need to do is to make sure that we have a function that can run or that can send a message. And as I said earlier, as per the API, by the way, okay, there's only two parameters that are needed. It's required. It's the ID of the user and the text that you want to reply to every time you receive a message or your bot receives a message. In which case, here I set it as your message has been received. So ID text. Okay, so I'm gonna cheat again, make it easier, because I've forgotten about this. I wrote this a year ago. I had to spend a lot of time rereading this tutorial and understanding how I created it. So I think it's here. Okay, so okay, so it looks like I'm just gonna have to create a new URL. Telegram URL plus, okay. I'm a little anxious, guys, because I'm at 6%. So anytime now. Okay. Anyway, send message. I think chat ID. I think I need a chat. I'm pretty sure I need a chat ID. Where is it? Send message, ? chat _ID equals. All right. Plus the ID exactly, plus the user ID, plus the text message we want to return. whenever the user sends in a message and text. I'm pretty sure. All right, and then I'm just gonna copy paste this. Cool. Cool. All right. Yeah. So now we're ready to write our third and last function, and it's gonna be a DoPost function. And we specifically need to name it DoPost because Google requires it to do so. So let's, as per what I wrote here, it is required by Google Apps Script documentation page. Let's see. Okay. So it says here we either need to have a do-get or a do-post function. And I am no developer, you guys, so I think this can be explained better, but from what I understood, as per the internet, a do-get function is different to a do-post function in the sense that do-post or a post function or a post request is much more secure than a get request. A get request typically sends the information over through a URL, like it appends all the information through a URL, whereas a post request would send the information through a message. For those of you who can explain this better, please do so in the comments. I just like quickly Googled that. I quickly Googled that. That's what came up. It made sense to me. But I think there is a much better way of explaining it. But I don't want to get too sidetracked. We need to create a DoPost function. So basically, DoPost function is what happens. So this basically answers the question of, okay, so what do we want the bot to do? Or what do you want to do with the letter E here, with the information that we receive from the user? So I said earlier, think about the webhook as like a courier or a wiretapper that eavesdrops and like observes what kind of messages or what messages the user sends to the bot. And then when it hears or when a user sends a message, it runs back to the URL and sends the message. So basically that message is represented by letter E. And E here is like, it's not just a message, it answers to what time the message was sent, who sent the message, what's the user ID of the person what's the user ID of the message, what's the message ID? I think there's something like that, I don't know. But so yeah. So basically DoPost function or the DoPost method answers to what do we do when the user sends in a message, and that message is gonna be sent over to the Telegram bot API as the letter E. And I will show you guys what the letter E actually looks like if we look at the data structure. So anyway, let's just create. All right, so E, by the way, is like, it's like a JSON JSON serialized. I don't know what's the technical term for it. Like JSON, it's like a JSON object. Okay, there you go. A JSON serialized object. So we will break that that letter E there and see what that actually looks like in layman's eyes. So DoPostE. So let's start with creating a variable called contents, or whatever you want to call it. So contents meaning this is the content of the letter E. Okay, content. So since this is a JSON, JSON.parse E dot. JSON bar parse string. I forgot, guys. Let me cheat again. JSON e dot post data. Okay, whatever the data that was posted. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we do have, so to show you guys what that looks like, let's try to get updates. Let's try to see what that looks like, what kind of message gets sent to our webhook whenever a user types up a message to our Telegram bot. Is that it? Oh, I'm kidding. This, no, I think this is it. As per the Telegram API. This is the thing that we need. Okay. We just need to add a method name. And I believe that method name would be the get updates method. Okay, it says can't use get updates method while webhook is active. We need to delete the webhook first. Webhook was deleted. Let's try to see if we can get some updates. I hope so. Please. Okay, true result. All right, so let's, okay, perfect. Now I'm gonna send out a message to our bot. Okay. There you go. And I'm just gonna copy this to a JSON parser. And that's it. That's the data structure of that letter E. Like if you, what do you call that? Like decode it, I guess. This is what it looks like. So for us to get, the one that we want here is the user ID, which comes from message, and then from, and then ID. Now you guys know what my user ID is on Telegram. Excuse me. All right, so let's incorporate that into the code. So whenever someone sends in a message, I want to get the user ID. So, because like this whole thing here is like the contents, the variable, this variable, oops, where is it? Right, so this variable, the contents, right? And then from the contents, we just want to get, like, we don't care about anything except the ID. So, oh, sorry. Content from that ID. Perfect. So once we have the ID, we're now ready to send a message. So there are two parameters for it. One is the ID and then the text, which we can either store as a variable or we can just like put down here. So at least I want to say confirmed, received, done. Oops. What in the world? Well done. Pat in the back. Why not? Alright, so I hope this works, guys. Let's now deploy it. Oops. And if what we did here is right, then if we send a message, we should receive that text that we just wrote. Hey. It's not working. It's probably because we deleted, you know what, we deleted the webhook, but let's just run the webhook back. There you go. Perfect. Now we have a working bot. Cool, and that's how you make one. On the next part, or on the next video, I'm gonna go over how to get this bot to send these messages, or these messages, right, that you send, how to store that inside a cell in a spreadsheet.